to collaborate live. We are. We are. So I'm going to let everybody introduce themselves, and then I'm pulling up my questions on my phone so I can be prepared. But in the meantime, why don't we start with Heather and work our way down? Everybody introduce yourself, and then I'll go last, and that way I'll give you a minute to find my questions.
Hi everyone, I'm Heather Severino. I'm a Microsoft certified trainer. I'm also a Microsoft 365 Apps and Services MVP. So I do a lot of collaborating and listening and stopping and whatever we're doing. I'm happy to be here with you today. I'm actually local, so I live over in Port Orange, which is a small beach town just south of Daytona Beach. I'm not making the commute though, if anybody knows I-4, but yeah, happy to meet all of you. Hope you'll come to my session right after this.
Hello, my name is Joy Apple, also M365's App and Services MVP. Been in the Microsoft space for about 16 years now, so we've seen things. I will confess publicly, SharePoint is my first IT love. I am the joy of SharePoint, and talking about all this great stuff is one of my favorite things. So thank you for being here, supporting the community, and supporting this new conference endeavor.
Hi everyone, my name is Dan Ray. I am an MCP. I was awarded in February 2022 and self-employed at this point, doing both training and consulting.
So what he's saying is he's open to work.
Yes.
So I'm Sherry Oswald, also a Microsoft certified trainer, and I've been a trainer for over 20 years, and SharePoint is my baby. Quit calling my baby ugly. Yeah. So I'm actually doing a different tool set this time, so I love the fact that the conference is platform agnostic. We collaborate in different ways, so I'm actually highlighting the TechSmith suite with a little bit of PowerPoint today. So if you're interested, come on by. But yeah, I'm Shortcut Sherry, so we all have our little name in the space. So come on by and check out all of these amazing sessions. You're in great company today.
Sorry, we gotta share one mic, guys. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Sharon Weaver. I own Smart Consulting, a Microsoft Gold partner. And I am a MCT, Microsoft Certified Trainer. I am an MVP in M365 Apps and Services and Teams. And I'm a regional director. I don't have a region, I don't direct anything, and I don't work for Microsoft. So,
All the things.
all the things. But the really cool thing, like they mentioned, is this conference is about collaboration, not specifically about a specific tool set. So we are any product, any platform. Heather, keep that. Any product, any platform. I love it. All right, so I'm going to get started with question one, and then I'll hand the mic down. You guys can fight amongst yourselves over it. This is going to be, this is super fun. You get to fight over money.
Collaborate.
Okay, first question. What are some examples of successful collaboration for your respective industries that have led to groundbreaking innovation? So where has collaboration really done something that's brought something cool forward? And can you share the key ingredients that made that successful?
All right, you go for it, Joy. First. See, I'm just polite. I did the hand raise, even though I'm used to doing that virtually these days. I think I'm going to highlight something that in some ways we're kind of tired of, but yet also appreciative of. And that's the virtual meeting, the virtual event. This is hybrid, right? I know for me that kept me sane when we couldn't get together in person. Being able to continue to work with my colleagues around the world. And I also got to meet and partake in events that I wouldn't have gotten to do otherwise. I spoke at Scottish Summit. I spoke for the Collaboration Conference in Paris. And I couldn't afford to fly to all those places in the same year. So that was amazing. I think the key to that success was the willingness for us to continue to move forward despite the obstacles, despite the challenges. We're in the collaboration space because we believe in the power of collaboration, and we can make that happen no matter what we're doing. So that's my personal opinion there. I think that's a good highlight for me.
Jump in. How many of you have experienced that document version 1, version 2, draft 3, final?
No, this
edit.
is not final one.
Yeah. I think for me, it was when we were able to shift to that co-authoring experience where we can have everything in the cloud. You know, trying to get that shift across the culture of an organization is huge. And being able to know which version are we all working in, who's working in it right now, you know, not having to worry about if somebody accidentally deletes something, you know, that we can go back to that previous version or restore it or use it for something in the future and save that time of not recreating something else from scratch that's similar. And I think we're seeing big leaps in that now with AI, that we can also find those documents that are similar or related and bring those right into a workspace that everybody can collaborate in, whether it's synchronously or asynchronously. So I think we're going to see bigger things coming from just that foundational thing that may have started a while ago that we're still trying to get everyone to adopt. But yeah, go for it, Sherry.
One of my clients that I worked with for years, for 5 years, like, we're moving to the cloud. We're moving to the cloud. And they kept telling they kept saying, we're delaying it. Our people can't handle this much change. Our people can't handle this much change. Well, guess what? The pandemic hit. They all went remote, and they handled the change. I think the companies they underestimated the people that are there and their ability to adapt, and it was a huge win. So they, when they called me and said, we're actually in the cloud, I'm like, let me look out the window. Well, that explains the pigs flying outside. And I was not expecting this to ever happen, because for 5 years, they're like, we're moving. So I think the fact that people overcame that, and again, don't underestimate people. They do a good job.
Before Microsoft acquired LinkedIn, I saw the power of a professional network, where I thought it was all about just finding your next job. I was at Microsoft for 11 years, thought I was going to retire from Microsoft, and then at some point that plan changed for me as opposed to my plan, and LinkedIn became a place where I found my voice, where I found Dwayne Hyatt and Joe Gasper and Teresa Cyrus and many other people in this room. Heather, Sherry, and I met at probably an MCT conference in Seattle, so in person, years before the pandemic. But finding those ways to collaborate, and with people that Joe, Dwayne, and Teresa, none of us had met until LinkedIn, and now Teresa and I just met today. And Dwayne, Joe, and I met out in Seattle a year ago at Ignite. And Lance is here too. This is the first time I've met Lance in person. So that type of collaboration has only been possible with things like LinkedIn, and then finding out where people live or making sure people know about local conferences like this.
I think it was Chicago that we met Dan.
Yes, at Ignite.
It's always somewhere.
Duh.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to go on to 2, and I'm actually going to answer this question, but I'm going to answer it after number 2 because I'm going to merge the next questions together. So question number 2 is, collaboration often involves merging diverse perspectives and expertise. How do you manage leveraging the differences to foster creativity and drive innovation within your teams and organizations? Now, I'm going to blend 1 and 2, and here's what I'm going to talk about. A very heavy percentage of my portfolio of my business, like well over 50%, is construction and engineering. So we work with a lot of builders, we work with a lot of construction companies. As you can imagine, that's about as diverse as it gets in the tech space, right, for us, because those people are out. They're not sitting in front of a computer. Many of them have all kinds of limitations because they've been in the field their whole lives. And so they don't think about things the way we do. And I have single-handedly watched my team work with them and meet them where they're at, 100% virtually, okay? So in the before times, you know, I used to say this, we can do this. We can be successful with this virtual collaboration implementation. And everybody's like, I don't know, you need to be here on site, you need to hold a hand, I don't get it. And we have gone to visit them once or twice to introduce ourselves, but truthfully, we have implemented innovative solutions for these industries where they are able to work remotely with all of their team. And we've done it 100% virtually. I mean, that doesn't speak to collaboration then I don't know what does.
I'll say that I feel like, especially given the pandemic, we've had to do everything virtually, but I think that it has helped foster thinking about ways that we can be more inclusive of people that may not be in the same location as you. So there's nothing worse than when there is a meeting and there's 5 or 6 people in there and they are ideating or they're trying to solve a problem, and you've got that 1 or 2 employees that are remote and they might be at a whiteboard on the wall of the conference room. It doesn't feel like you're part of that, whatever is happening that you're doing. So there's a lot of great tools that many different providers have done, but for Microsoft, for example, I really like what Whiteboard is doing. They give you all these templates so that you're not like having to create something out of the box where you, did I get a woohoo back there, Jonathan? That you can have something that's like, let's do some decision making, or here's a great template for you for your meetings, whether that's OneNote, whether that's Whiteboard, whether it's Loop, whatever you're wanting to use these days. You've got several different choices, different tools that you can use that might be a great fit, and that gives everyone the opportunity to be in there contributing in the same way and being able to feel like if they're not physically in the same space, that they are all together and being able to work in a more efficient and productive way. So I think there's a lot of great things that can help with that.
My first thought in my mind is gifts, right? And that sounds silly. But the chat culture, right? That's where we all are. That's where a lot of our communication happens now. And really over the last few years, we've seen email be one of the lower priority ways to get in touch with someone now, right? I used to live in Outlook, and I check it several times a day, but that's not where I live to get communication. So I think one of the priorities we should have is bringing people in and getting them to be involved in a comfortable, inclusive way. In a big meeting full of a lot of people, not me, but maybe people will be less willing to speak up and let their voice be heard because it can feel rather intimidating. I rarely have problems talking, so that's fine. But other people, right? But with the chat, we've got the ability to be a little less formal. We can still be talking about important things, but I don't feel stupid or intimidated chiming into the chat, especially when you can be a little friendlier with the GIFs or the emoji that kind of make up for that face-to-face body language that we have. Right, so I think that is a really good way to help bring everyone in, no matter how new to an organization they are, how serious the topic is. We can all be included, and we can be more encouraging to hear every voice, because it can happen in real time in that chat without talking over people. So I really like that.
Many of us have a friend in common who now works for Amazon named Mike Hammond. And Mike Hammond likes to fly in the exit row, and I thought of Mike on the way down here to Orlando because he waits for the flight attendant who comes over and says, can I have everybody's attention? You're sitting in the exit row. I need to get your verbal confirmation that you're willing and able to assist in the event of emergency. And Mike travels with a sign that says yes, because verbal communication includes written communication, and he thinks that that's an appropriate time to teach the airline industry what verbal communication means. Nonverbal communication are things like gestures and facial expressions, etc. But I thought about using my Surface and Whiteboard to write yes, and I decided, I don't know what Mike says after he tries to explain what verbal communication is, and I don't think anybody in the exit row wants to learn about it from me.
One of my clients is a major airline, and I can tell you right now, the flight attendants are not going to appreciate that. They're just trying to get the plane launched, right?
Yes.
Anyway, so perfect minds, or great minds think alike, because yes and yes. I can't add to that, because you're exactly, both of you said exactly what I was going to say.
So on the topic of diversity and accessibility, shameless plug. Next Tuesday, well, next month, actually, if you Google it, just Google it. You'll see it on my socials.
Can I bing it?
Bing it.
Can we bing
Oh,
it?
sorry, Bing it. This is
Platform
any product
agnostic.
any product platform. I can Google it here. So I'm actually part of a team. The PMP sharing is caring, and I work with the maturity model team. So the Microsoft maturity model is based on a Lean Six Sigma model that basically talks about maturity. Our next meeting is 100% about accessibility and maturity level accessibility within your business. Donna Sarkar is going to be our guest for Microsoft. Guys, you don't want to miss this one. So just look for the socials. It's going to be Microsoft Maturity Model, PMP Sharing is Caring, all about accessibility. I'm excited. All right. Number 3, knowledge sharing.
Oh.
I didn't say
I
knowledge
think we're gonna fight over the
hoarding.
mic on this one.
I said knowledge sharing, just because.
Sharing is caring.
Sharing is caring. Knowledge sharing is crucial in collaboration. Share some strategies and best practices for effectively bridging knowledge gaps between individuals or organizations with varying backgrounds and expertise. So while you guys think about that for a second, my last full-time job before I went out on my own, I worked for an engineering company, and when I was hired, here was the use case they brought me into. The 100-year-old company, 30% of their workforce was due to retire within 5 years. None of them knew how to use a computer. They had binders upon binders upon binders upon binders of project information. And when they hired me, first of all, they were like, well, you know SharePoint, and we'd like you to use SharePoint. I was like, yay. Second, they're like, we know that you know knowledge management. So here's the challenge we have for you. We want you to spend the next however many years you're here working with all of these senior level engineers and chiefs to get the knowledge out of their head and out to the people, for all the new people. And I was like, so we created basically a community of practice for every single engineering discipline. We had a lead, and basically anytime anybody asked a question, they were encouraged to ask their question in the different discussion forums so that these lead engineers would answer their questions in the community of practice. We knew it wasn't going to solve everything, and we did some other strategies as well, but we sure did get a ton of knowledge out of those people that we would not have gotten otherwise. That was then there to help the next generation. So when I think about knowledge sharing and collaboration, to me, it's the idea of that tacit knowledge that is held in people's minds that is very difficult to get out. We're not talking about SOPs, we're talking about people who have done this and they know how to do it, right? How do we get that information out of them so they can share it with other people? And that is what we did. So that's my example.
Start at the end, or?
Oh, Sherry had her hand up.
I try to recognize that. I talked over her in a meeting the other day. She goes, I had my hand up. I'm like, I'm so sorry. So for me, I'm, again, passionate about SharePoint. It's one of my favorite things. I always try and tell people, your communication center are like the newspaper in your organization. And if you're sending things out in email, you get it to that person at that point in time, or that audience. So the person that comes in 6 months from now, they don't have the benefit of that knowledge. So whatever you're sharing, instead of creating, like, I love to convert employee manuals into pages in SharePoint and make them news, and then you repost them as news. So people are like, did you know we do educational reimbursement? Did you know we have this benefit or that activity or whatever? Because people don't, how many of you read your employee manual? You signed it, you said you read it, you didn't read it, right?
I was just agreeing that it was the employee manual.
Right. They gave me this 800-page thing. So things like that, even knowledge share that people are supposed to have, convert those into SharePoint pages, create a site, and start promoting that, and just resurface them periodically and say, this is the news right now. And then it shows up for that organization. So I think converting that written documentation into something that's more dynamic and searchable is one way that we can convert that. You know, because we're in the same.
I got a riff on that too.
Yeah.
She said searchable. So,
Searchable.
I recently went to the dark side to a product company. We make a third-party app for Microsoft 365. So Orchestry Software, a great little company to work with, small, very devy, engineering, ops focused. Confluence is their baby. SharePoint is my first love, right? So OneDrive is also amazing, also baby SharePoint, right? But it's a very powerful tool. I tend to start my search queries from OneDrive. I just do, because I'm in there a lot anyway. But most of our engineering documentation is in Confluence. So I'm almost a year in at Orchestry, And I am still working with them to implement that search connector. Because use the tool that works for you. That's the beautiful thing of where we are today in collaboration, is it's not cookie cutter anymore. We can work with our IT departments, make sure we are not implementing shadow IT. Can I get an amen?
Amen.
Okay. But also make sure that the employees can use a single source of truth search process to find all of that really good, rich information. We're transitioning from a culture of looking for things and following the click trail to where we search. And I say this all the time. I hope my husband's not watching the live stream right now, because he goes to find an app on his phone. It was like, don't look for it, search, right? We don't have to look for documentation anymore, search. But if we're gonna put it out there, it needs to be findable when we search. And I have one more thing. When you're having conversations about stuff at work that impacts a group of people working together in the same department on the same project, no matter what chat platform you're working, please don't do it. We got to preach this to our people. We need to make sure they're comfortable not doing that in one-on-one chat. Put it where everyone can access that and be part of it. I know in Teams we fight that battle every day. I am so guilty of it. I go ping David and go, yo, what's the da-da-da-da-da-da-da? And I'm like, why did I not put that in the product group chat where everybody else and support can be part of it? So I think that's the battle where we are now. We need to make sure people feel comfortable having these conversations publicly at work and encouraging those conversations to be more public, because that makes them searchable and findable. That's what I got.
And that's a great point, because you should always start first before you decide on a tool that you're going to use to make sure that it has that searching and filtering capability. Wiki was a good instance of that in Teams. It's like everybody would use, if they were using Wiki, you couldn't search it. And for a while, they were trying to implement to have it be searchable. And now, if you don't know, instead of Wiki, it's OneNote, which is searchable, which I'm very happy about. What I will say is that having great documentation is key. And having things like tagging or whatever you can do to add additional layers of being able to find relatable content. Years ago, Delve came around, and with the assistance of Office Graph, that's awesome, because if you have somebody that's new that's onboarding and they have a question about a specific project or a topic, they can go look for that and find out who else works in this organization that knows about this, or find files and other documentation, if they have permissions to that will help them with whatever knowledge it is that they're needing to gather. Taking that a step further, we now have Viva. And Viva is great for being able to go right to that experience, that connection page within Teams, and it's going to have all of the relevant things that they need to see, the documents, the things that are happening in their feeds. So not only is it that we need to have a great setup for searching, but now we're getting into that space, and there's several products out there that may be doing similar things. We're getting into that space where it's coming to you. It's being brought to you if it finds that there are things that are relevant based on what you're working on, who you're working with, what you're searching for. So lots of great connections and interactions between these applications that if Teams is where you work, it can all come right to that hub for you.
Good job ending on Teams. That was great. that was nice. All right, guys. So thank you everybody for coming. We got like 1 minute till we start our sessions. Everybody, thank you for being on the panel, and let's have a great day.
Yes.
Good morning, everyone. We are going to be talking a little bit about Microsoft and Google working together, using one or the other, or both. Thank you. I don't usually hold a mic. We're excited to talk to you today, and my name is Teresa, and this is Richard.
Hello.
Hello, I hope we are all good online. We'd like to thank our sponsors. Here's our sponsors.
All of them.
Thank you. Don't forget to provide your feedback. We should fix that slide.
Oh, yeah.
And there is an after party, so please stick around. It is here.
It's like 9 in the morning, but be thinking about the after party.
Be prepared.
Because it's here.
It's end game here, end goal. All right, my name is Teresa. I'm a director of digital workplace. I have been working from home since 2017. I am a yoga enthusiast. I will tell everyone about that. I live in Indiana. I have 3 kids. I have 2 cats, a dog, a hedgehog, some hermit crabs, and a husband. So it's busy in my house. And I manage a fully remote team, and we have been on Google since 2019. I moved from Microsoft. I started in SharePoint many years ago, but moved to Google in 2019.
Hello. I'm Richard Toland. A little bit about me. I'm an avid Disney-phile, as is my family. So we are down here in Orlando, I don't know, 1 or 2 times a year generally. Live in Colorado, where there is no humidity or water, so it's definitely different here. If my beard starts to sprawl, you know why. As an avid traveler, we recently just trekked to Europe, and I'd love to talk about it. Helps to bake into my old man memory, so I'm happy to share on any of that. And then, yeah, my family life is weird. I have 2 kids, and my wife has 3 kids. Or so she tells me all the time. 2 dogs, 1 cat, 1 guinea pig. We used to have some fish. They don't last very long. But yeah, that's me. And I am available and open, I think, as is Teresa, on LinkedIn and X now. Twitter is now X. So, okay.
All right, so today what we're going to talk about, some foundational concepts. Really, we're going to go over some of the basics about Google Workspace and Microsoft, comparing how they are both accessible from any device. They're both online services. Microsoft does have more on-prem. Google Workspace is all browser-based. It's all online. They're both designed for easy access and sharing. Microsoft does have a little bit more focus on security bias, but really they're both the same. Google has come a long way with their security. While both are viable platforms for easy accessibility and collaboration, Google Workspace is a little bit lighter weight. So we'll talk about some of the differences between Microsoft and Google and how they work together, or if you would want to choose one or the other. For collaboration, the Google Workspace is designed for teams who really they want to collaborate in the cloud. Collaborating on documents is very easy to learn for Google Workspace users. Microsoft is also cloud-based, but they also offer a license tier for some of its core productivity to use their productivity suite in offline apps as well. File storage. Well, both offer different tiers of cloud storage. Google Workspace plans provide a little bit more of a generous file storage depending on what kind of package you're on. If you're on Enterprise, we get unlimited. I never think about file storage ever, not once. Well, I do when somebody asks me and I say there are no limits. So keep going. More shared content is stored on user-allocated storage in Google. And the cost, they're generally about the same cost depending on what you're looking for, and we can talk a little bit about that as well. And the features, Microsoft has more of a full-featured Office software, process automation, and business email. And Google, while they've bridged the gap over the last couple of years, there are still some things that Microsoft has that Google relies on extensions and add-ons. We'll talk through
Yeah, so across the board, the core productivity suite between Microsoft 365 and the Google Workspace are both fairly synonymous. There's a lot of overlap in functionality, the core functionality of your productivity suite by way of documents, Excel, or sheets, data sheets, slides is PowerPoint, Outlook is to Gmail, Teams is to chat, right? So there's a lot of synonymous overlap in feature functionality. To highlight, I think some additional expansion in overlap of the cloud functionality. Microsoft has historically been ahead of the curve in the advanced security models or things that your user community don't generally see, right? Especially when we start talking about the enterprise license tier. It's all of the added security feature sets, added endpoint management feature sets, and Google is very quickly, I've noticed and learned really recently, they're really quickly catching up in that space. Everything from really fine-tuned granular endpoint management and all the way out to data loss prevention and DLP encryption, a little less on discoverability and lifecycle. I think Microsoft's still ahead of the curve on that, but Google's catching up really fast, I think. I feel like pretty soon they'll be almost synonymous there too. And again, that's a lot of what's right in the background. That's where your users don't generally see all those features, but that rich data security model is rapidly evolving on the Google space too.
When we first started talking about this session, it was kind of an anything you can do, I can do better, because he's Microsoft and I'm Google. But it really delved into a feature-rich comparison and how we can work together. My organization is on Google, but we still have 25,000 people who still use Office products. So, and we work with lots of vendors that use Microsoft. So we do need to find a way to work together cohesively.
Yeah, I don't know if you caught that. She said a portion of her organization of 25,000 people. How many people in here work for an organization that's 25,000 or bigger? Yeah, there's one. Two.
Well, mine is.
Google Workspace also hits the smaller organizations too, and I think her point though is at every license tier, totally valid. Is like feature fidelity and feature richness is there at every single license tier, both for Google and Microsoft, enterprise, all the way up to the enterprise premium, enterprise plus. The feature-rich features, the rich features are really there for every different license tier and every scale of business, no matter how big or how small.
And yes, while we do have 25,000 people still on it, out of the organization, it's 175,000 seats. We are working to bridge that gap, and we work with Google because some of the features that when we moved to Google weren't available specifically in teams like finance, legal, talent acquisition. They use tools that they're only compatible with like Excel or Word documents. So it's not just Google that is trying to catch up. It's working with those vendors to update their products so they can be platform agnostic as well. So that's been a challenge for us. But again,
Anybody else face that challenge?
using,
Vendor compatibility, other plugins, little niche macros and things like that in Excel. Who's still running Excel 2003 stuff? 2007, 10? Anybody? No. All right, just checking. Online, I saw you. All right.
Okay. All right, so we did talk about add-ons and extensions, and like I mentioned for Google Workspace, if there are specific features that you could have done in Excel or Outlook or your Word, if it doesn't exist natively in the Google tools, you can most likely always find it in the Chrome Web Store. So these are just a couple of the top rated, top picks for productivity extensions. I don't know why that's doing that. Is it you?
I don't think so.
Are you stepping on something?
We lost it.
We lost our video for those of you online.
Oh.
Okay.
Projector's tired. It's working hard today in the heat and the humidity.
So for me, I use Gmail, of course, and some of the extensions that I immediately got were multi-forwarding, being able to multi-forward, or saving, thank you, saving attachments to my drive immediately. So there are some things that are very easy. They add onto your browser, or they add onto your account, and you click them, and they work very nicely. Some of them you have to be careful with. We have a very strict security review. Every time somebody wants to add an extension, it does go through a security review. And we'll talk about Microsoft.
Yeah, I would echo that too on the Microsoft extension side, right? Like generally the qualified extensions need to go through a vetting process through Microsoft as well to show up in the add-on store or the app gallery. What I think, we were talking earlier about vendor compatibility, and as vendors have evolved with the product sets to go, I'm gonna pick on Microsoft for a minute. Historically, Microsoft has provided, their primary business win was in the offline file space, right? We've got offline tools, we can do offline Excel, we can do offline Word, and vendors would latch onto that as an add-on in Office Excel or Office PowerPoint or Office Word. And as that transitioned online, right, the cloud platform really forced all of those ISVs out there to now rethink their strategy on their integration components. And there's a lot, I've seen a big ramp up, especially on the Microsoft add-on store, of vendors who have historically only been online that are now retooling for online only, or excuse me, offline. Now they're retooling for online exclusivity, so you have to use it online, and they no longer provide an offline version of that. So that's a nice, I think, a pairing, and it does fall right in line with what we're seeing in the Google extension space, right? When we really want to look at Chrome extensions from a feature fidelity or add-on, bolt-on features, a lot of the vendors that are now publishing to one space are publishing to both. So we're seeing a lot of synonymous or parallel functionality from ISV vendor partners as well.
It's
Sector's awesome.
it's throwing me off. It's all right. So a couple of other examples would be blocking ads and managing your passwords, tracking, spell checking your emails if you wanted an additional translation in there. Really, extensions and add-ons can really help you customize, personalize how you want to use Google or Microsoft. And I think that's the beauty of what Richard was talking about, the parity between both Microsoft and Google. They're really bridging the gap. Thank you. Okay, hold please.
Okay, let's see. Maybe it's better. It's gonna fry everything in 2 seconds.
I hope not. All right, so I want to talk about using Microsoft when you are on Google Workspace. So, like I mentioned, is everything okay?
Is it good?
Good? Okay. Like I mentioned, we still have a lot of people that are on Microsoft. And like I mentioned, we do work with a lot of vendors that use Microsoft tools. And creating and collaborating on content is really at the heart of what we want to do, is getting work done with our productivity suite. So when we're working with content received from customers, partners, vendors, teammates, we shouldn't lose time converting files or working with unfamiliar tools if we're constantly working in Google. So with Google Drive, you can store and share over 100 different file types and formats, including Word, Excel, PowerPoint files, PDFs, images, videos. And you can use intelligent features like priority and quick access in Drive, and you can find your files very quickly. Google's known for their search. So finding files in Google Drive is relatively easy. So in Google Workspace, you can also still work with Microsoft Office files, even if you don't have Office installed. You can add the files to Google Drive. You can keep your files in Microsoft format, even if, again, you don't have Office. You can convert your documents and PDF files to docs, sheets, or slides, which is really nice. You can work in Office and save your changes in Drive. You don't have to switch from application to application. You can comment on Office files in your Drive preview. You can email copies of your docs, sheets, or slides in a Microsoft format. You can preview and download Office files that are embedded within other Office files. And that's using Office files in Drive. The next thing is you can add a Meet video meetings to Outlook. You can add that to, if you're using Meet, but you are also using Outlook, when you're creating a meeting, you can add that option to create a Meet video meeting instead of a Zoom or a Teams meeting. And as an administrator, you can also set up calendar interop, which would allow Microsoft Exchange and Google Calendar to work together. So you can see availability, status, and view each other's schedules if both domains are in the interop settings. And you can also convert macros from Excel to Sheets. Again, Excel is a big reason why a lot of my associates are still on Office, especially finance. And there's a lot of teams that have built pretty extensive macros. So now you can, sorry, I lost my place.
Excel macros.
Excel macros. Now you can convert your macros. There is an add-on, a macro conversion add-ons that helps users migrate their macros from Excel to Sheets. So you can still save time through automation, and you don't have to start from scratch if you are recreating things from in Sheets. There was an announcement 2 weeks ago at Google Next about this product called Mio. And it is a chat interop. And what it does is if I'm in Meet and Richard's in Teams, he can stay in Teams, I can stay in Meet, and we can chat with each other. It is really cool, and it was a new announcement, and we are starting to test it, so I'm really excited about the chat interop because that's a big thing that we get a lot of. People, they want to stay in Teams, they don't want to navigate between Google Chat and Teams. So now I stay in chat, he stays in Teams, and we can still chat with each other.
I'm sure both providers will charge you for that.
No. It's one.
It'll be free at first. The typical model, right? Let's sprinkle some crack on that. Oh, I left money on the table. Sorry, forgot. Now you have to pay me for that.
I don't know what the pricing model will be.
Well, Microsoft will definitely charge you. So we had a slide on this, and it was like, cool. Now, using Google files when you're on Microsoft, that's not a thing. That's not a thing. The common transport model is the open office document type, right? So when we talk about a PPTX, DocX, XLSX, that's the open file type that came with our 2013 Microsoft Office that became the platform agnostic standard for open office document types. So to move that document, that's why Google can work on those files because of the open office document types. So say I'm working in Google Slides and I wanted to work on that in PowerPoint, I had to send that off to my Microsoft constituents. Then I have to convert that down into a PPTX open office document type as a slide deck, and then they could open it from the Microsoft world. So again, because Google is 100% cloud, those files, to get them out, you have to convert them down. I don't call it down convert, but you convert it into an offline file that's the open doc type. And I'm looking forward to maybe Neo in the future as Mio. Sorry, yeah, I said it right. In the future, I'm looking forward to maybe wink, wink, online, anybody listening. I'm hopeful that that will automatically flip so we can see that at real time, do a file conversion on the fly, somewhere in the middle, in the service layer. That'd be utopia. I don't ever have to leave Teams. People can stay in their Google Spaces. We could collab on files between platforms. That would be sick. So maybe someday. Wishful thinking. More time? Switch. Okay. This slide we're going to talk a little bit about gaps and what, again, anything you can do, I can do better. What? So I'm going to read across the right-hand side for the Microsoft 365 slide here, and we'll talk about some differences and kind of how to bridge them. I do show here the first bullet point we just kind of talked about, right? It provides licensed users a local app that they can work with offline files by default. That's not in every license tier, and I don't know if everybody really realizes that. By the time most of us are using Office 365 these days, or using the local Word on my desktop, nobody knows what license I'm running, right? They don't know that I'm on an E3 or a Business Pro Plus, but there is an online-only tier of licenses for Microsoft 365 as well, which does not include the offline tools. So just, for everybody's edification here and online, that is a licensed component, so you don't get that by default. You do have to have that included in the SKU or added as a bolt-on. But we do point out here, no matter what, you can't touch those Google files, right? Like the Office client doesn't natively touch the Google files. It's not a thing. They're locked away in the Google box. So you have to get them out via that open Office document type. You want to talk about the first one?
Sure. Well, conversely, again, you can work and edit and modify and share Office files in Google Workspace. It does mention there are limited editing functionality. Of course, you're not going to get the entire suite of functions that are in a local app for using your Word or Excel or Sheets. I'm sorry, slides. But again, you can save, you can modify, you can convert anything from Office to Google in Google Drive. Talk about automation.
Okay. So the next one is automation. I don't know if anybody here or online has heard of Power Platform. It's this new thing Microsoft came out with a few years ago.
Never heard of it.
They have one of those is called Power Automate, designed for low-code, no-code automation solutions, workflow, business process flow automation. And the part about that is the low-code, no-code bit, right? That's the only difference, I think. So Google has it. You can talk to it, but Microsoft doesn't require you to code it.
Google has Google App Sheet and Google App Script. I will be talking a little bit about the Duet and the generative AI, which was announced a couple of weeks ago in Google Next. It's called, no, it's not the Duet, it's the coding with the Vertex. I always want to say Vortex in my mind. That was just announced. So there is some coding for the automation. It is fairly straightforward, though. We don't necessarily use a whole lot of it, so I can't really speak to some of the in-depth. Right now, it is an add-on. We had been using it for free, but like Richard mentioned, once they give it to you and then they get you hooked and then they start charging, a lot of the things were in beta with Google, which is great because we get to test a lot of things, but then we get hooked on it. And then I work for a nonprofit, we can't necessarily pay for it. But yes, the more automation is coming with Google. They are rapidly putting a lot of investments into their productivity and the generative AI. Yes, question?
Hey, Teresa, so on the Power Platform side, there's obviously more than automation, there's Power BI and everything else. So on the Google side, is it more there's some limited capabilities, and if you were doing a lot of work, would you go
So that's a great question. For those of you online, he asked if there are other things that we can't do with the automation or the app sheet or app script, would we go to a vendor? And for a lot of things with Google, we do pull in Google partners and vendors. I know that we've worked with, when we moved off of SharePoint, and I'll talk about that, we replaced SharePoint with 2 vendors, LoomApps and AODocs. One for the intranet piece and one for the lists and workflow piece. That was AODocs. There is also the data studios, which is like the Power BI, or the, what is it called?
Looker. Now it's called Looker.
Well, Looker, but what was it? It's not Power BI.
Oh yeah, Power BI.
It is Power BI, yeah.
Yeah, and they're almost synonymous functionality. The reach, sorry, so the reach to the data, like what data it can reach easily, is definitely different. And I would say, if I was using Looker to talk to native Google services, it's very similar to using Power BI to talk natively to Dataverse or data lakes on the Microsoft side.
But Looker can connect to so many different things. Looker is actually really amazing. They've expanded a whole lot of it. If you haven't really played around with it, it's a lightweight. It's so easy to build these really cool dashboards and pulling in data and displaying it. It's awesome. Looker is very cool.
It used to be called Data Studio.
Yes, it used to be called Data Studio. I think in the past 6 months they changed the name to Looker.
You want to take your next one too, the app sheets. You mentioned app sheets already.
I did. The low no-code app creation is app sheets. It is evolving a lot, especially with the new announcements from Next a couple of weeks ago, with the Vertex AI. It is creating apps with no code, creating all sorts of feature-rich things you don't have to know how to code. It will create them for you. And you can talk about your low no code.
Yeah, so the synonym for that one, right, is Power Apps in the Power Platform, and also low code, no code. For I think what Teresa's referring to in the AI automation is Duet on the Google side. Copilot is the equivalent. We have a slide on that at the very end. But that's the integrated service for generative AI to start helping you build those. In your low-code, no-code chain, for automation, the code that the Google side uses is JavaScript. So anybody familiar with JavaScript, or TypeScript, I'll say, would be able to transition into that, but you gotta have that skill set. But for the low-code, no-code side on Power Platform, there is no code until really in the Power App space you get crazy with the PFX. Like you can code them, but it's designed to not need to. And I think a really big parallel is that Google is knocking on that door really fast. They're coming from behind in app sheets in a big way to present a really strong offering in the low-code, no-code space for sure. That'll be pretty parallel with the easy button Canvas apps. You know, when I crank out a phone app or I crank out a tablet style Canvas app blank sheet, they're right on par with that today. And the licensing is pretty equivalent to, I think that's one thing I had a conversation recently where I feel like if Google was to slice away their external data pricing, everybody would go. Like everybody would suffer the differences and just go because it would be free to, but they won't do it.
Suffer's a
Oh yeah, no,
that's a big
yeah,
word.
that's a big word, sorry, that's a bad word. They would learn to adapt. Should I keep going?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, SharePoint Online. So Teresa already mentioned SharePoint Online, not a thing in Google historically. However, they just opened up Sites recently. Google's, or Sites is part of.
Sites has been,
Here,
you talk and then I'll talk about Sites.
So for SharePoint Online, right, that's, we all know that on the Microsoft 365 side as the CMS capabilities. So lists, libraries, file storage, paging, content management system, content lifecycle system as well, with all the integrated DLP stuff. But completely lacks external page publishing. That's not a thing for SharePoint Online. Microsoft took that away very early on as we transitioned into Microsoft 365. They said no more external pages. we have a new thing called Power Pages, Power Platform Pages. And guess what? You get to pay for that. So, yeah, anyway.
So Google, of course, does not have a SharePoint Online equivalent. We use Sites sometimes. So my company, we decided not to go with Sites as our company intranet. Sites really are pages that are stored in a drive. So it's a file type in Drive. It's very, very lightweight. It's very easy to spin up a site, put your content on there. You get some basic navigation. You get some templates. They've made some recent announcements regarding sites, including the ability to publish external pages. You've always been able to share those pages outside of your organization, but now that you can create public sites pages, which is, there are very specific use cases for that. We created an intranet with a vendor partner. So it's a very robust intranet. We migrated all of our SharePoint Online sites and other various intranets across my org that were on Sitecore or, there were several platforms. So we migrated everybody to one platform called Lumaps, which is our intranet. And for the other pieces of SharePoint, our document libraries went to Google Drive. The lists and workflows and the database type work from SharePoint, we moved to a product called AODocs. So those two work very well with Google. They integrate all of the connections. You can embed things, and all of the integrations are already there. The partners, there are a lot of partners that Google works with that all of the functionalities and features, if they're a Google partner, they all work very nicely together. But you have to pay for it. So
Yeah.
take that. Sites is included. You don't have to pay anything extra for it. But if you go with another partner, of course, it's extra dollars.
So the last, and we dug deep to try to find some really big differences, and there's not a lot of really big differences between these two enterprise suites anymore. The last one I pointed out, I think it's kind of petty, but in PowerPoint, I'm a PowerPoint guy, and in PowerPoint I like that design mode feature where it can help suggest me some layouts and some graphics from online. It's pretty sexy. I like it a lot. Doesn't.
Not yet. Google Duet for Workspace will have the slide creation. And I'll talk a little bit about this, but you can take a Google Doc with your bullet points and say, create me a slide deck, and it will create it, all of it, with images and layouts, and it'll do all the work for you. So,
That's pretty
I
awesome.
mean, anything you can do, we're gonna do better. So,
Oh.
I'm just kidding. But yes, for right now, there are a couple of things that are very different from slides between slides and PowerPoint, and the design mode is one of them.
All right. Any questions on any of that? Additional questions? No? Okay. Okay, so that's cool. That's it for differences. That's all we could come up with. Feature fidelity between Duet and Copilot are almost identical. I will say I'm a crazy nerd, and I got really deep at the Google Next conference that I attended this year. Well, I guess you were there too.
Yes, we saw each other.
Yeah, so the track that I followed was, I was heavy AI, and I listened in on a whole lot of that crazy Vertex, model garden, large language models, being able to talk to stuff. One differentiator that I see that I think is kind of a game changer is that when you're talking through Bard or through the Vertex AI model, context switching to understand who is talking to the model, the ability for the to tell Vertex AI context switching of, I'm a clinician talking to a model. I'm a regular average Joe who's who's visiting with my doctor, and it to interpret the context of regular average Joe versus the actual clinician that's a very differentiating factor. in AI space in the future. And I don't know, I see Google kind of, like forever, Microsoft has been really ahead of that curve in AI, I feel like. And they've got a great big footing on the cloud for it, and they're prepared for it. But that was a really innovative thing that I think is going to make a lot of creative solutions just explode on the Google space. But given that there's so few differences, and bringing it back to productivity, a little less geeky stuff, why not both, right? Effective collaboration, Teresa mentioned it for her 25,000 users. I'm a vendor, right? I'm a partner in a partner space. I work in a partner ecosystem, and I work with clients all the time. Half of my clients are on Google Workspace. Half of my clients are on 365. There's a few that are out there, they use other platforms too, and they're a little more difficult to collaborate with. But between Google and Microsoft 365, why not both, right? And the things that we're seeing now with Mio coming out, where that chat integration is going to be real time, right? And being able to open that up between tenants of multi-cloud platform, different productivity suites, I think is huge. That's going to be a big win, and yeah, I'm sure I'll have to pay for it. But that's going to be a big win in my Microsoft world, to be able to talk to all my Google Workspace clients from my single Teams interface is going to be huge. But in the meantime, you can switch, right? So you can Googlefy or Microsoft-fy, you can.
Not a thing.
Not a thing. It's a term now. I coined it. It's a term. You Googlefy your accounts. So say you have a 365 account, you can sign up on a Google account with your Microsoft world, my Hotmail, my company domain name, M365 Worker School account. Can also sign up for a Gmail online identity.
One
vice
caveat
versa.
to that is if your organization has barred you from doing that, because there are some
Right,
organizations that
Yeah.
prevent you from using your organization email to create a Google consumer account.
Yeah, very valid point. And likewise on the Microsoft side, they could be the
Probably
synonym
not
for
that.
that too. It could be locked out too.
Probably not that, because Google will work with Microsoft.
Well, it is a tenant feature. in
Organization-wide,
Azure.
right,
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, not team-wide, but Azure or organization-wide every
Right.
tenant, you can lock that down. And then I know both can also do whitelisting, blacklisting too. So if you have domains that you know you definitely don't want to work with, you can put them on your blacklist, say you're out. Or teams that you exclusively you do want to work with, you can whitelist external domains as well, and that'll kind of bridge that gap. So you can go both directions, right? So I can take a Microsoft account and say, cool, let's go sign up for a Google identity with it, with my domain name, if it's allowed. And then vice versa, you can take the Google account on your Google Workspace and go sign up with a Microsoft identity on the Microsoft world to be able to access the Microsoft cloud. What that allows for is from, say, Teams or from Google Spaces, I could share a file from one cloud to my colleague or my vendor externally, and then they could log in with that Google identity in the Google Spaces and work in that collaborative file space with me on the Drive files. Or likewise in Teams, I can invite a Google Workspace account to collaborate with me in Teams or anywhere in the Microsoft sphere on any of the files fabric there. Then they would be leveraging that Microsoft identity to do that.
I would just log in via the browser. I wouldn't have the Teams app on my desktop. So when I'm joining a Teams meeting or going to join a team chat or something like that, I just use the browser. But I use the browser for everything. So
I have a personal question on that. Who in here is on a Windows machine? Who uses Windows exclusively? Any Macs in the room? Okay. I'm trying so hard on this Chromebook to make it go for me.
you love it.
I love it. I love the form factor. It is so lightweight and slick, and it's fast, and it's 100% browser, and it's lacking so many features that, that I'm used to. Like a driver would just handle that, or a little app I can install would handle that, but not on a Chromebook. You don't get those things on a Chromebook. And you know, for me, that the feature fidelity is what my biggest hurdle is, right? And I liken it back to the finance reference you gave of macro, an Excel macro, something that we built in 1995, and we've carried it forwards all the way to Office 2023 or whatever. And I'm that guy that, like, I want my clicker button to work when I want my clicker button thing to do what it's doing for browser presentations. I use the example of the Logitech Spotlight. Have you seen that? Right? It's a presenter tool. I love that thing. I can highlight a section of the screen. I've got a little laser pointer button on it. Doesn't work. It's not a thing on a Chromebook. Doesn't work. Anyway, being all browser is cool. It's lightweight. It's super fast. But sometimes I like those local tools.
You gotta virtualize it.
Virtualize it. Make a plugin extension. Oh, you want to talk about it? You ready for that?
Well, we're only going to talk a little bit about it.
All right. Too late.
So we've been talking about the Duet AI and the Copilot. So it is everywhere. It's all anybody's ever talking about. I have a session on it next, Intro to Google Duet. So stick around in here and you can learn all about it. I think the competition is awesome. I think that both Microsoft and Google have done incredible things in the last year. And I'm really excited about what's to come. I think all of our productivity is going to go through the roof when we leverage these tools appropriately. I know there's some fear with security or job security, but I really do think that the future is generative AI, and we are on board. What do you want to say?
Yeah, I talk a little bit about it in my slide deck too for my presentation this afternoon. More so from the where did it come from, and now that it's here, how do we use it? I think the race to use it is blinding a lot of organizations, a lot of the client space to true use case and value proposition, right? So it's a new buzzword, it's all the hotness, new hotness, all the rage, everybody wants to use it. Make sure that you have a strong use case before you really explore it, and make sure that you, I would say, do it in your own box, your own isolated space. When you use public, I'm going to say ChatGPT, right? The equivalent for public ChatGPT in the Microsoft world is the Azure OpenAI. Allows you for landing zone to configure your own ChatGPT using the GPT-4 or 5 engine now. But it's in your own locked box. And likewise in the Google world, that's all built in your Google Workspace. It's already carved out for you if you step into something called Vertex AI, which is the equivalent to the OpenAI or ChatGPT interface. Vertex AI is already locked up in your Workspace subscription in your own isolated box. They don't have access to any of that stuff. The reason I say that is often as a lot of clients out there are exploring into AI now, they're exposing potential ideation or innovation, right? You're releasing your IP when you talk to ChatGPT public on the OpenAI site. So watch out for that, right? Put it in your own little lockbox, and be sure as you explore specifically with Duet and Copilot, get it on a trial license, but don't step into a trial unless you have a specific business use case, because you are very limited time on the trials on those.
You can also test out right now if you go to Google and you can turn on the labs, you can turn on the chat feature. You can do some testing in your own consumer Google account with the Duet.
Yeah.
So just test it out a little bit. And again, I talk a little bit more about the use cases, what it is, and some things to look for. So we have some helpful links for us, for everyone to share. Working with Office files and Office editing in Drive. And then some next helpful link. We'll share these with you, but Google does an amazing job of giving us these resources. Getting started with being a Google Workspace user.
Do you have a question?
Question?
Yes.
Yeah, we will.
Yeah, we will.
Yeah.
Good question.
A lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think all the slide decks are getting shared out via the site and online.
Online, yeah.
Yeah.
And the next helpful link we have is comparing the workspace editions. So based on licensing and what you got, what is in there. So this is a nice comparison chart.
I tried to get you one for Office 365 too, but it wouldn't create, I think Google blocked it. It wouldn't create a QR code for me, and Chrome was like, no, you don't get that QR code. But there is a synonymous page for this for Microsoft as well. You'll notice it says on the tabs there's business, there's education, enterprise, and essentials. That is 100% parallel in Microsoft World 2. You have business, education, enterprise tier, and then a free tier for your core essentials.
Just some helpful links if you are looking to switch from Microsoft to Google, or just check it out. I do think we talked a lot about using both and using them in conjunction. What is this?
Why not both?
Why not both? But don't be afraid of the Google Workspace.
Yeah.
Just check it out.
Yeah, if you do, right, if you are to switch, licensing is always a conversation point. Cost associated with this cloud services is a real deal, and especially as you scale, Teresa's talking about 100,000 to almost 200,000 people in her organization. That's a lot of buying power. That's a lot of leverage for license negotiations at a price point. And no matter what client you are, right? If you're in a nonprofit space, if you're in education, the bigger the group that you're buying with, obviously the better leverage, the better stake you're going to have to leverage with. But
Your miles may vary. It's
Yeah.
very dependent on.
yeah, totally agree. She said your mileage may vary. One thing I do want to highlight though is they are almost dollar for dollar synonymous in their price points as well on almost every tier of the license stack for both platforms.
Yeah.
Did I say it? Mileage may vary.
Your mileage may vary. I think that's our last slide, but we can open it up for questions. We just have a couple more minutes and then we will break. So does anybody have any specific questions or use cases that you see in your org or problems that you've run into with collaborating with partners, vendors, anything that I can answer? Yes?
It's more of the comment you made earlier about how you use the Chromebook and the app. So Teresa, for you, when you used to be working primarily in Office 365, did you always have a Mac?
No. Oh, repeat the question. So the question was, I have a Mac, Richard has a Chromebook. When I was on Microsoft, I had a Windows device. And I moved to a Mac about 2 years ago. So,
And is it, so I guess my question is, using the Mac connected to Office 365, is that something you do at all?
I could, yeah. It's just getting the apps using Microsoft. I did have a Microsoft license for a long time because my team owns that, and I had one. I never used it anymore, so I gave up my license. But I could use it. I used the browser because that was easier for me.
And this is just out of curiosity, why did you switch to the Mac?
I'm an Apple person. I have all Apple products, and I just really like the Mac. It's really, honestly, it's a personal preference, in my opinion.
Yeah, I get it. I have an iPhone and an iPad, and probably switch.
Yeah, it all just works.
I have a question for you two then. If Apple
No.
had their own cloud workspace for collaboration, would you switch?
I mean, right. It depends on how mature it is, right. At this point, no.
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 You haven't drank enough Kool-Aid yet? That's good.
Well, it's a difference between the productivity suite and the hardware and what,
Yeah, valid point. And I'm feeling that, right? Like for my client space, I need to be able to ramp up on Google Workspace. I got to know the ins and outs of all the endpoint management and all that stuff. That is why I'm rocking the Chromebook, is learning up on that stuff. But at the end of the day, it's about feature fidelity for me too. It's about the productivity capabilities of the platform. So my primary machine is like an i9 64 gig powerhouse with a ton of VMs that I run on it all the time for Windows this and Linux that, and And not all of that's going to run on my lightweight Chromebooks, but in the Google Workspace, and especially at enterprise endpoint management space, and the cloud powerhouse of what are we doing in cloud code capabilities, AWS, Azure, Google Workspace, Chromebook is awesome, rocks.
Do we have any other questions?
Any online?
Any questions online?
No?
Okay.
All right.
All right. I think we are right on time.
Don't miss happy hour.
So again, please
Right
feel
here.
free to submit your feedback to let Richard know what he can improve upon, and myself. But thank you all for joining, and thanks to everyone online.